Have you ever wanted to influence situations or people without anyone noticing your true intention? You may have felt that drawing too much attention to yourself can generate resistance. But if you act discreetly, your influence can be much deeper and longer lasting. It is precisely this subtle and silent mastery that we will explore in this video. Thousands of years ago, Sun Tzu, a Chinese general and strategist, wrote a masterpiece called The Art of War. Although originally focused on military strategy, this book transcends the battlefield and offers valuable lessons that we can apply today in modern life to achieve our goals with efficiency and subtlety. Sun Tzu argued that the true winner is not the one who fights many battles, but the one who prevails without having to fight at all. In this video, you will learn how to apply the teachings of this ancient master strategist to influence people and situations without arousing suspicion or generating unnecessary resistance. The goal is to transform you into someone who dominates your environment imperceptibly, directing events in your favor and achieving important goals smoothly and effectively. Get ready, because from now on, you will begin to master the art of invisible power. Before we dive into this fascinating universe, quickly check if you are already subscribed to the channel. If you are not yet, take the opportunity to subscribe and activate notifications so you don't miss any content that I prepare with. So, much love and dedication, especially for you. Now we can begin our journey into the subtle art of influence by diving deep into Sun Tzu's strategic wisdom. Sun Tzu and the invisibility game. Dominating without being noticed is one of the most refined forms of power. And it was precisely this logic that Sun Tzu cultivated throughout his work. For him, direct confrontation was always the last option. True mastery lay in winning before the war even began. And this was only possible through silent strategy, anticipation, and invisible manipulation of the battlefield. The supreme art of war is to defeat the enemy without fighting. This is perhaps one of the best-known lines from the art of war, and also one of the most misunderstood. Contrary to popular belief, Sun Tzu did not celebrate conflict. He avoided it. To him, the true warrior was one who understood his surroundings so deeply that he could shape them without others noticing. Mastery, in this view, was not loud. It was not overt. It was almost invisible. Sun Tzu believed that every battle was won before it even began. How is this possible? By anticipating the enemy, identifying their weaknesses, hiding your own strength, confusing, distracting, and conducting with discretion. The battlefield, from his perspective, was not just physical. It was psychological, emotional, symbolic. And this is exactly where his wisdom finds direct application in today's world, whether in a corporate environment, in a delicate negotiation, or even in an interpersonal relationship. Applying Sun Tzu's teachings to everyday life requires understanding a central principle. Visibility is vulnerability. The more you expose your intentions, your desires, or your strength, the more resistance you attract. But if you learn to move subtly, to hide your cards, to act through others, you can control the game without becoming a target. The true strategist is the one who does not appear threatening. He is someone who operates behind the scenes, but whose decisions profoundly affect the course of events. Sun Tzu also spoke about the importance of unpredictability. For him, becoming predictable was opening a fatal gap. Unpredictability creates confusion in the adversary. He does not know what to expect. He cannot prepare. This is true for battles, but it is also true for negotiations, political disputes, and even personal conflicts. If you are unpredictable, you are in control. And the more natural this unpredictability seems, the more it becomes a legitimate form of domination. But be careful. Invisibility does not mean inertia. It means intelligent action. A strategist is not someone who ignores action, but someone who acts with precision. He is someone who understands that the right move at the right time is worth more than 1,000 hasty steps. Sun Tzu taught that everything must be carefully planned, but that plans must be invisible. Preparation must be deep, but imperceptible. The intention must be clear only to the person executing it. This game of invisibility is also a game of perception. While others are busy jockeying for attention, prestige, and position, the true strategist is shaping the outcome behind the scenes. He doesn't have to be the loudest, the most charismatic, or the most dominant in speech. He needs to be the most aware, the most prepared, and the most silent. When you start applying this logic to your life, everything changes. You stop reacting and start anticipating. You stop fighting and start leading. And you do this without raising your voice, without imposing yourself, just by understanding the situation clearly, acting discreetly, and making decisions that influence without provoking resistance. This is exactly the kind of attitude we will begin to develop in the next chapters. Now that you understand the basis of Sun Tzu's invisible strategy, it's time to start putting this vision into practice. And it all starts with listening, observing, and remaining silent. Because, as you are about to discover, those who dominate their surroundings are those who understand them best. The rule of silence: talk less, observe more. If the basis of invisible dominance is to deeply understand the environment around you, the first step is clear. You need to observe more than you speak. The greatest strategic advantages are hidden in silence, and it is precisely through listening and attentive observation that you begin to build your authority without having to claim it. We live in a world that values discourse, exposure, and speaking out loud. But those who are always talking miss the chance to hear what others reveal, whether willingly or unwillingly. Sun Tzu once said, "If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles." And this phrase becomes useless if you do not know how to observe. Observing is not just seeing what is on the surface. It is capturing signs, details, hesitations, intonations. It is noticing how people position themselves, what they avoid saying, where their words do not match their actions. Every gesture is information. Every silence is a clue. And those who pay attention to this are always one step ahead. Active listening is one of the most powerful tools in the invisible realm. When you listen with real attention, without rushing to respond, you create a kind of presence that is rare. People tend to open up more, to trust you more, and, without realizing it, they begin to reveal exactly what you need to know to master the situation. More than listening to others, it is also essential to control your own speech. Talking too much exposes strategies, intentions, and weaknesses. The art of influence begins with knowing what not to say. This does not mean being cold or distant, but rather being intentional with your words. Everything you say should serve a purpose. The rest is noise. A powerful technique in this context is the use of strategic pauses. When you remain silent after a question or statement, you create a space that forces the other person to fill. This space is uncomfortable for those who lack emotional control, and the instinct is to say more than they should. You, in silence, observe. And by doing so, you understand more than if the other person had been pressured. Another tool is subtle mirroring. When you observe and discreetly repeat the other person's body language, way of speaking, or even certain words, you create an unconscious sense of connection and trust. This allows you to guide the conversation much more easily without directly imposing anything. Silence also protects. In conflict situations, those who remain calm and observe can identify the emotions at play before reacting. While others are dominated by impulsiveness, you have the advantage. You decide when and how to intervene, and when not to intervene. This listening and analyzing stance also allows you to understand what's behind behaviors. Someone who opposes an idea may actually be afraid. Someone who tries to appear superior may actually be insecure. The invisible strategist doesn't react to what's on the surface. They understand what's underneath and act on it. Over time, you'll notice something curious. The less you speak, the more value your words will have. People will start to pay more attention when you decide to speak up. And when that happens, your presence naturally becomes more influential, even without fanfare, even without apparent effort. In a world where everyone is shouting to be heard, the one who listens becomes a powerful presence. And this is the kind of dominance that no one sees coming, but everyone feels. If this content is making sense to you so far, please leave a like. This helps me know that you are enjoying it and encourages me to continue bringing you this type of strategic content to transform the way you act in the world. In the next chapter, we'll put these observations into practice by exploring how to act strategically without being noticed, how to manipulate the board without it looking like you're even playing. Strategic actions, how to manipulate the board. Once you have learned to listen and observe carefully, the next step is to start taking action. but not in an impulsive, direct, or visible way, but in a strategic, calculated, and invisible way. If observing is like studying a game board, taking action is like moving the right pieces at the right time, without others realizing that the game has already started. Manipulating the board means interfering in the events and decisions around you without it seeming like interference. You don't present yourself as the protagonist. You let others believe that they are making decisions on their own, while in reality you are discreetly guiding the process. One of the most effective tools for this is the use of targeted options. Instead of giving a direct order, you offer 2 or 3 alternatives, all designed to favor you. The other person feels free to choose, but in practice, whichever option they choose still leads to the desired outcome. This reduces resistance and increases the other person's sense of autonomy while keeping you in control. Another valuable technique is strategic praise. This isn't empty flattery, but rather recognizing a specific quality or action of the other person in a subtle and genuine way, reinforcing behaviors that interest you. For example, by praising someone's leadership skills before asking for collaboration, you activate the other person's desire to maintain that image, and often they will accept the request because it is consistent with the image you praised. There is also the option of stealth delegation. You get someone else to take the initiative, even if the original idea came from you. You do this by planting suggestions, leaving clues, and asking questions that lead to specific conclusions. When the other person believes they came up with the idea on their own, they will defend it more vigorously, and you reap the rewards without having to take on the risk of exposure. The environment itself is also a piece of the puzzle. Controlling the context is a powerful way to guide decisions. This could mean choosing the right place for a conversation, the right time for a proposal, or even the tone and language that will be used. A comfortable and well-prepared environment increases receptivity and reduces tension. Whoever controls the environment is half the battle won. But perhaps one of the most underrated strategies is that of apparent neutrality. When you position yourself as someone who is neutral, disinterested, or merely observing, others tend to relax their defenses. This false neutrality allows you to enter spaces of decision-making and influence without raising alarms. And that is when you observe, analyze, and influence silently, without attracting attention. To illustrate this simply, think of a game of chess. The skilled player doesn't start with direct attacks. He moves pieces, occupies spaces, forces the opponent to react, and gradually limits the opponent's options until checkmate is inevitable. But the opponent only realizes this too late, because he was too busy trying to understand the visible moves, not the invisible ones. In the real world, this strategy requires patience, discipline, and emotional control. You have to resist the urge to react or show that you're in control. You have to accept that credit will often go to others, and that's okay, because your real goal isn't immediate recognition but the end result. This is a refined skill that requires practice, but the advantage is clear. By dominating the board invisibly, you avoid direct conflicts, reduce resistance, and multiply your chances of achieving what you want with much less wear and tear. Domination, in this case, is not about imposing your will. It is about leading, guiding, suggesting. It is about making others want what you want, without them realizing it is happening. And when you master this type of strategic action, you begin to see every conversation, every meeting, every relationship as an opportunity to move pieces on the board, always calmly, precisely, and without drawing attention. In the next chapters, we will explore how to keep this domain even more protected, using one of the most powerful skills of the invisible strategist, the art of hiding his true strength. The art of camouflage. Hide your strength. So far, we've talked about observing, listening, and acting strategically. Now we come to one of the most powerful and underappreciated principles of invisible mastery, hiding your strength. This is the art of camouflage, the ability to appear harmless, ordinary, or even disinterested, while internally positioning yourself to act with maximum impact at the right moment. Sun Tzu taught, "When able, feign inability. When active, feign inactivity. When near, appear distant." These phrases are not riddles. They are instructions. They reveal a philosophy of strategic disguise that serves both protection and freedom. Showing too much strength attracts competition, envy, resistance. When others notice your ability, they prepare against it. They create defenses. They try to neutralize you. But when you disguise your ability, when you appear unpretentious, others relax. And it is in this space that you advance without being noticed. Imagine a person in a group who rarely speaks, but when he does, he surprises with clear and impactful ideas. Because he doesn't compete for attention, he naturally stands out. Because he seems out of the game, he moves with more freedom. This is exactly the logic you should cultivate. Don't fight for visible territory, but conquer space behind the scenes. Hiding your strength also means not revealing your goals. When others don't know what you want, they can't stop you from moving forward. Sharing your plans often leads to unnecessary advice, premature criticism, or even sabotage. Strategic silence about your goals is a way to preserve them. This camouflage can take many forms. Sometimes it means acting humbly even when you know better. Other times, it means being willing to appear uninformed in public in order to maintain your position as an observer. In certain situations, it means praising others and giving them credit, even when they have contributed more than they appear to. This reduces friction, builds trust, and positions you as a quietly influential but solid figure. Another benefit of camouflage is unpredictability. When no one can predict your actions, you become more difficult to deal with. This confuses potential adversaries and protects you from being targeted by direct attacks. A person who appears strong all the time becomes a target. A person who appears neutral does not. In competitive environments, such as companies, negotiations, or even social groups, this strategy can be the difference between moving forward or being blocked. When everyone is competing for the same visible space, you find alternative paths where no one is looking. It's not about cheating, but about not exposing yourself unnecessarily. And there is an emotional element to all this. Hiding your strength is also a form of self-control. It is the ability to not have to prove anything to anyone, to not feed on external validation. The true strategist acts to achieve goals, not to win applause. This attitude over time builds something valuable, a quiet reputation. People begin to perceive you as reliable, efficient, calm, but they can't quite put their finger on why. And this vagueness protects you. While others try to figure it out, you keep moving forward. But be careful. Hiding your strength does not mean being passive. It does not mean canceling yourself out. It means knowing when, where, and how to use your ability with precision. It is like a feline that observes silently, chooses the right moment, and attacks effectively. This is the essence of camouflage. Patience, reading the environment, and taking lethal action only when necessary. Now, I want to hear your perspective. Have you ever found yourself in situations where hiding your strength was an advantage? Or times when showing too much caused you problems? Share with me in the comments. Your experience may help others better understand how to apply this strategy in practice. In the next chapter, we'll delve into an even deeper dimension of this invisible game, the human mind. We'll explore how to master it psychologically, using strategic empathy, emotional control, and subtle triggers to influence without forcing. The psychology of unobtrusive influence. If camouflaging your strength protects you from external resistance, understanding the human mind allows you to lead others with precision. The psychology of stealth influence is the terrain where quiet strategies meet the inner mechanisms of decision-making, emotion, and perception. Mastering this territory is essential to wielding power without arousing suspicion. People don't make decisions based solely on logic. Emotions, insecurities, desires, and fears are always at play, even when disguised by rational discourses. The invisible strategist understands this. Instead of trying to win arguments or impose ideas, he or she bypasses emotional resistance, creates identification, and leads the other person where he or she wants to go, gently. One of the pillars of this subtle psychology is managing other people's egos. Directly confronting someone's ego often generates immediate resistance. Instead, you validate the person's importance even when you want to steer them in another direction. Recognizing the value of others is not flattery, it's strategy. Making them feel respected opens the door for them to accept new ideas without realizing that they're giving ground. Another key element is the use of strategic empathy. This means understanding not just what someone is saying, but what they are silently feeling, fearing, or hoping for. When you act on these underlying emotions, your actions seem natural, almost inevitable. The other person feels understood and begins to trust you. Trust, in fact, is the basis of lasting influence. But it is not built with impressive promises or speeches. It is built with consistency, with small coherent actions, with attentive listening, and with genuine respect. The silent strategist builds trust, as if preparing the ground for a harvest, without haste but with clarity of purpose. There are also emotional triggers, behavioral patterns that trigger automatic decisions in people. One example is the principle of reciprocity. When someone feels they have received something valuable from you, attention, help, an idea, they tend to reciprocate. By using this principle naturally, you plant an emotional debt that, sooner or later, will be repaid in the form of collaboration, support, or loyalty. Another powerful trigger is implicit authority. It's not about showing off titles or power, but about demonstrating confidence and subtle mastery over the subject. When you speak calmly, without exaggeration, and act consistently, others recognize your influence without you having to claim it. Language is also a tool in this silent psychology. Gentle words, well-chosen metaphors, thought-provoking questions, all of these have more influence than direct orders or aggressive statements. The tone of voice, the pace of speech, the look in the eyes, all of these elements communicate much more than the literal content, and the strategist knows how to use each of them. Even more important is knowing when to walk away. Sometimes, silence after a provocation is stronger than any response. At other times, allowing the other person to win a superficial argument preserves your strategic position for more important decisions. The strategist's mind does not seek to win debates. It seeks to shape realities. Discreet. Influence also means accepting that the credit will often go to someone else, and that's part of the game. When you allow someone to feel like they've come up with a great idea, even if you planted the seed, they'll start to trust you even more and will willingly seek your input on future decisions. As you master this subtle psychology, you begin to see patterns in people. You learn to read between the lines, to anticipate reactions, to diffuse conflicts before they arise. Your presence becomes perceived as pleasant, trustworthy, and stabilizing, even if you don't say much. This is how you wield power without seeming threatening. This is how you dominate with ease. In the next chapter, we will bring all of this into the real world, with concrete situations and practical examples of how to apply these strategies in different contexts of life: professional, personal, and social. Practical applications. Dominate without being noticed. Now that you understand the fundamentals of invisible influence, observation, silence, strategic action, camouflage, and psychology, it's time to step down from the theoretical realm and apply it to real-world situations. Theory is powerful, but its power only becomes apparent when it finds its way into practice. And in this chapter, we'll explore how this subtle mastery reveals itself in everyday life. Imagine a work environment. A leader who shouts, demands, and imposes himself rigidly tends to generate fear and even obedience. But over time, he also attracts resistance and sabotage. Now think of another type of leader, one who listens before deciding, who asks questions instead of giving orders, who recognizes the merits of others and distributes responsibilities naturally. He seems to be just a facilitator, but his presence shapes the behavior of the team. He dominates without appearing dominant. This is the kind of influence we want to develop. Silent but real. In a meeting, for example, an invisible strategist can guide the discussion without speaking the entire time. He or she observes who is influencing whom, notices where the tensions are, and chooses the exact moment to intervene with a suggestion that seems obvious to everyone, but that completely changes the course of the conversation. In personal life, the same principle applies. A parent can gain obedience from their children not only through explicit authority, but through consistency, active listening, and example. A partner can inspire change in the other without demanding it, simply by adjusting their attitudes and allowing the other to reach the necessary conclusions on their own. In a negotiation, dominating without being noticed is the secret to success. The most skilled professional is not the one who talks the most, but the one who listens the best. He identifies the other side's real intentions, offers concessions that cost little but generate high symbolic value, and, in the end, leaves with the best deal, and with the other party satisfied. Even in social circles, this skill makes a difference. You don't have to be the most outgoing, the funniest, or the most present. You just have to be the one whose opinion is respected, whose presence is noticed even when silent. This is built with discretion, emotional intelligence, and a certain mystery. People are attracted to those who don't give everything away right away. To put this into practice, start practicing listening as an active tool. In each interaction, make an effort to speak less and notice more. The tone of voice, the choice of words, the gestures, the silences. This will give you information that others don't even realize they're giving. And the more you notice, the easier it will be to lead without having to force it. Then start making small strategic moves. Suggest rather than impose. Ask rather than assert. Offer choices rather than orders. Observe how people respond. Adjust your behavior. The more natural this becomes, the more effective and invisible your dominance will be. It is not about manipulating in a negative sense. It is about guiding responsibly, ethically, and intelligently. A true invisible strategist never acts for evil, but to build more harmonious environments, more conscious decisions, and more balanced relationships. And remember, this type of influence is lasting because it doesn't generate resistance. People don't feel forced, they feel understood and respected, and so they open up to what you propose. What you achieve through this approach is unlikely to be reversed because it's not based on fear or pressure. It's based on trust and perception. Over time, this becomes part of your way of being. You start to see patterns more clearly, to avoid unnecessary conflicts, to anticipate obstacles before they arise. And when someone asks how you achieve such consistent results, you just smile, because your strength lies in what no one else sees. If you are enjoying this content and want to see more videos with strategies like these, take the opportunity to leave your like now. This shows me that you value this type of reflection and motivates me to continue bringing ideas that really transform. In the next chapter, we'll wrap up our journey with a powerful summary, what it really means to be an invisible master, and how to apply that knowledge wisely in every area of your life. The true master is invisible. Dominating without being noticed is not just a skill, it's a philosophy of life. It's the conscious choice to act with intelligence, patience, and precision rather than relying on brute force, imposition, or noise. It's knowing that true power doesn't need to be displayed. It manifests itself in results, not appearances. Along this journey, you have learned that listening can be more powerful than talking, that observing carefully offers more advantage than any argument, that small, discrete actions can generate big changes, and that hiding your strength, far from being a weakness, is a refined tactic of those who truly master the game. You've also seen that influencing people through emotion, strategic empathy, and quiet trust is far more effective than trying to control through rigidity or fear. And perhaps most importantly, you've realized that you don't have to be at the center of things to guide them. You just need to know where to touch, when to act, and most importantly, when to wait. The true master is invisible because he has no need to prove anything. He stands out precisely because of his lack of noise, his calm, his precision, and when he acts, he transforms. This is the art of dominating without being noticed. If you've made it this far, congratulations for seeking this type of knowledge. And if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, take advantage of it now to subscribe and continue receiving content that will make you increasingly aware, strategic, and prepared to lead in silence.